Recently, I had a comment that was posted on one of my YouTube videos that it was kind of disappointed that I didn't do more videos. And the real reason is I really haven't had time. I probably will get back to them soon, but right now, uh, I've got other things in my life that uh, I'm more interested in. But I did come across the fact that I had made a lot of Facebook Live videos, and there was a lot of good information in them that some of it wasn't in the videos that I had currently listed. So what I decided to do was list these to my YouTube channel. And I hope you enjoy them. I hope you find more knowledge in them. And also, if you're not a subscriber, well, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit the bell so you'll be notified. You select all. And if you like them, give them a big thumbs up. I hope you enjoy. I'm going to be talking about unsoldering joints. Now, well, a lot of times when you're working on something, and it's good for repair too, but I was trying to do some little filigree work up in here, and it's kind of hard to handle. You have a problem that the thin wire wants to follow heat, and being I set this on 22 gauge metal, and as I was trying to solder these into places, you notice this had rolled out. The filigree wire just expanded, and the solder kind of pulled it, and it just soldered out. So it's going to be easier to take and just pull this piece out than trying to unsolder it, I'm sure. I might give it a try to see if I can't just work that piece out, get it free, and then reposition it, and then go like that. But chances are I'm going to have to solder it loose. And the problem is, and this is what some people have problems with working with their metals. Now, if I had used a 24 gauge backing plate, this would have been a whole lot easier because it doesn't take near as much heat on the backing plate to get it hot enough to where you can solder to it. But when you go to 22 gauge, what a lot of people don't understand when they're soldering is this plate soaks so much of the heat out, and when you're soldering something this small, you can't use a big torch or a big flame like you would when you're soldering your bezel and you've got everything together, because this is so light. If you did that, you'd automatically create a problem. It's just lucky it didn't get worse. I should have considered this more in my design, but we're past that point right now. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to talk a little bit about metals. Now, I don't work a whole lot with copper. I work with it occasionally, and I'll do some things, and I plan to work with it more. But I had a question that was brought up this last week about a solder joint whenever they were soldering some copper, and it was a fairly heavy ring that they were just soldering a joint together to make it in a loop. And someone had told them that they didn't have it hot enough, but the big understanding about getting it hot enough is not getting it hot at the joint, because you can get it really overheated at the joint because you're trying to get it warm enough for your solder to flow, but you have so much of your other area that's soaking the heat out of it. And you've got to understand, because it is worse with copper. Copper conducts heat a whole lot quicker than silver, sterling silver. And whenever you do this, you have to heat. If you're making a joint, say you're making a joint up here or something, you would have to heat everything that's back from it and get it good and hot back in this area in order so when you're making this joint, it's not sucking all your heat down. Because then what happens is you're having to over apply the amount of heat here to get your solder to stick, and then it really doesn't stick good when it's overheated. So realize that anytime you're soldering, make sure that you heat up your whole piece, or at least a big enough piece. I had one of my students that was in my been through my beginners and my advanced beginners class, and they were deciding to make a cuff, and it was a design that was complicated, and I don't have a picture of it or that's real handy that I can show, but it had 3 bezel cups that they had made to go on the top of it, and it was made out of some double half round wire that was really heavy. I'm going to guess it was I don't know. Anyway, it was really heavy, and they were trying to figure out how they were going to do this. And I explained to them that because of the thickness of that sterling silver cuff wire that they had made, that they needed to make sure that they applied a lot of heat to the area towards the end, and not just the heat to the area that they were planning to solder, because it draws so much out, and then you end up putting so much heat there, and you're soldering a thin bezel cup to a thick piece of sterling silver. And what ends up happening, if you don't do that correctly, you end up melting your bezel cup before you ever get your solder to flow and bond on your thick piece. So you need to understand this anytime you're soldering silver. There's certain techniques, and I try to explain this as well as I can in a lot of classes, but sometimes it needs going over. So realize that anytime you're soldering something that is really heavy metal, and like I say, even when you go to a 22 gauge backing plate, you're dealing with some thicker metal, and especially if it's a big design like this, there's a lot of metal that can draw the heat out. Now this has got some area cut out in the back, which relieves a lot of that. But if this was here, you would have to heat all this area so that as you're heating up here, this isn't transferring the heat out and cooling that down to where it's not hot enough to solder, because it doesn't take much heat on this thin filigree wire to cause it to misshape or something. In fact, I've had it to where I was laying some flat as a trim around a piece, and it actually climbed about a 1/4 inch off of the back plate, raising up because it heated up and expanded. And you learn these things over time. It's trial and error, but like I say, we're going to deal with taking this apart, and this it's going to be easier to take it apart. And normally on a big piece I put it up on my stand, but because of this is open and I'm going to be dealing in this area, I'm going to leave this on my solder block here, and I'm going to see if I actually got some flux that's got enough water in it, or I might have to put some more in. Yeah, it looks like it's looking good. But before we start any operation, especially when you're working with sterling silver, you don't want any fire scale. So flux it up. The flux, it not only helps with the solder flow, but it protects your metal so you don't get the fire scale and turn it black. Now, if I was going to heat this from underneath, I would flux the backside too, but being I'm just going to be heating this from the top, I'll flux the areas that I'm going to put my torch to. But always remember that if you are heating it from the bottom too, don't forget to flux it, because you could get some fairly deep fire scale in there, and to where it won't sand out or polish off. So, if it's light, normally it'll come off in your pickle, but if it's not, it's going to end up with a problem. Okay, we're going to see if we can't get positioned here to where I can heat and not burn up a camera. But I have it all fluxed up now. Now I'm going to be using my little Smith, and I like it because I can put the heat in a. It's really hot, which you have to watch it because it is a hotter flame. But I can put more heat in one area because I'm trying to heat this up, and it could go wrong. No, don't get me wrong. I could put too much heat, or anything can happen. As those of you that do this are aware, but we'll see if we can get a little flame going here without burning up things. And I explained flames before. Now I'm going to kind of go over that. Now your hot flame, and I'm going to bring this up. Your hot flame, as you can see, your tip is just hot. I mean, you've got a bright blue flame right there. Now, when you're soldering, you want to reduce flame, so you pull that out where you have a softer blue, and it comes out from there. That if you use that hot flame, you're going to build up more fire scale because you've got so much oxygen involved. Your flux can't take care of it. Now, see if I can work around this with this, but understand now. Always watch how your solder flows, or how it does, because you know that it's going to frost up, then it's going to start going down, and it's going to kind of turn dark now, and then it turns clear in this hot flame, so it goes a lot quicker. But what I'm doing is I'm heating up this whole area, and I'm going to heat up my block too, because I've got to have the area hot enough that I can get this solder, this removed. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my heat over here to the area that I'm interested in removing, and I'm going to try to get it to a point to where I get the solder to flow. I don't care if I mess up that piece. And it, like I say, I am dealing with a hot flame here, but I'm going to get it to, okay, I had it and I got it too hot and couldn't pull it off. But I'm going to try to take this loose, and being I've got everything in my way, it makes it that much more difficult to get this loose. And with this hot flame, it gets hot in a hurry. I use my other torch when I go to melting this because of that fact. Now I've got to get this off of there. And like I say, it makes it really hard with okay. Now as you can see, I don't know how much I was in the way of that, but as you can see, I've removed this piece. Okay, this will be, I'll clean it up and throw it in for scrap, and I'll just redo a new piece. I'm going to set this in the pickle here and clean it up while it's hot. And always quench it before you throw it in your pickle. But what I'm getting at, let me transition here. Okay, what I'm getting at is that whenever you make a mistake, don't think you have to throw the piece away, and don't get in a hurry. Now, also, some of you are using the little handheld butane torches. Now, just a little short one, you know, it's got a flame on top. Now, these are nice torches, and they work good for starting out in metalworking. They work real good with fine silver and sterling silver. But when you get to bigger pieces like cuffs, the heat that they generate, because they've got such a small flame, they can't generate enough heat for the amount of heat that is being soaked out by the edge of your piece, especially when it's large. So understand this when you start working with these in your design process. Work with something that is in the size that your torch can handle. I mean, it is good enough torch to do that kind of stuff, and it's good for starting out for a lot of you that can afford the better equipment now. But realize too that now Cheryl uses the Orca Easy Torch, and I've recommended it to some of the students because you can buy it for around $100 and you can run it off of a regular propane tank like your barbecue grill, you know. In fact, you don't have to get another tank. Just pull the one off your gas barbecue grill and go that way. But always consider this whenever you're doing your design that you have the equipment. Now, I could work on as thick a metal as I wanted. I have plenty of torches. In fact, I have journeyman like a experienced welder would use. So it's not a problem for me to do that. But for some of you, that's not something. And if I was getting into silver, that's not something that I would purchase to get into it. But realize what you want to work with whenever you get your torch, and if you are wanting a good torch to start out with, consider that work. I'm considering on getting one because hopefully in a little over a year we'll start doing some demos at our show, and I think it's ideal for being portable enough and to be able to use it to demonstrate some of it at our show. But and without rambling, and I'm going to take this piece out of here and I'm going to swap back. It's going to take a little while longer. I'm going to go ahead and dry it off, and we can see this, but it still has some flux that needs to be gotten out of there. But you can see now I've unsoldered, so I have nothing left in my areas to where I have to put it back. So instead of getting frustrated when something goes wrong, just take and unsolder it, whether it's just a bezel. I mean, a lot of times I'll do a bezel and for some reason it'll want to jump and it's crooked. Don't say, well, okay, it's not that bad. That's the time to take it apart and resolder it. It doesn't take much time, and you'll really be happy with the end product. The other thing is that I want to mention, because I found this a problem with one of my students, is that when you set your trim on here, make sure that your trim is down to your back plate. And understand this in design. I don't talk a lot about design, but this group here is a little bit more than just my class. So when you do this, now you notice I've got this ball or this bead trim around the side, and you notice how high this comes up on the side of here. Now I have an open back, so I want my cabochon to set on the back, which I've got it here handy, but I want it to set on the back, and I don't think this is warped, so it should go in fine. I can always push down, but I want it to set against the back of my bezel, so or my back plate. When you make your bezel, you have to consider the height of your stone. Now, if on something that my stone didn't have set on the back, I could actually shim my stone up, which is common when you're setting a stone. But if you want it on the back, your bezel's got to be at a height that it'll burnish in, and it needs to start touching your stone down in the area where your bead is. Now, this is leading to something. I'm not just rambling here, but it has to, when you start burnishing this in, it has to start touching the stone right here. Otherwise, your bezel is going to take a sharp bend right here. It's not going to flow on to there. And so your stone has to have enough height on that edge from where the back is. It has to have enough height on it where it comes there that clears right here so that your curve starts just above that. And the reason why I say that is, and I don't have pictures of them, but you see them sometimes where their bezel is set real uneven. And what's happened is a lot of times this bead wire, this trim wire, it might be a rope, it might be a bead, it could be anything. This trim wire solders to the edge of this bezel. Whenever you solder it in, it's soldering to this edge. So this bezel will not bend right here. So when you burnish it, it's going to bend from that point up this way. And if you have a full radius stone and it's set all the way down, then this is going to kink and come in, and it's going to lay bad. But what makes it even worse is if your bead trim is not all the way down, because a lot of times if you fit it right, it fits real tight. And your flux, when you put it on there, a lot of times will hold it up just a little bit. Well, when you heat it, it could be your flux, it could be just that you're overheating it and it expands a little bit. But when you heat it up, then you end up with a gap in here. Well, that makes this bead set higher on here. So then your bezel is only bending from that point up. And when you fold it in, it's all uneven and it's real noticeable coming around. Well, I saw some of these, and right off I got with them and I got them corrected and let them know that, you know, they had some other ones that didn't have stones set. And I said, this is the time to look for the problems and correct them right after you do something. And that trim was up off this bottom. It wasn't even against the back plate. So all it's a matter of is flux it up again, reheat it. You don't need to add more solder unless you didn't have enough in the first place. And just heat it up to where you start to see your solder flow, and take your solder pick and just lightly push it down, and then remove your heat, and it'll stay there. and then it'll be right whenever you get finished. Also, another thing is, when you solder your joint, make sure that you take the time to sand the extra solder off. Because if you don't sand the extra solder and your joint is wider, it's going to be a little stiffer anyway. But if you leave it wide, you're going to always have a problem burnishing where that solder joint is. And a lot of times that's the way, even though you clean it up and you can't see it on the outside, people tend to forget the inside. Well, no one's going to see that, but that extra thickness, it holds it away from your stone, and then whenever it burnishes in, if you do get it down, you always see a little place where it's coming out that it's wider. So realize that whenever you do your joint, make sure you clean it up. And that's going to do it for today. Now, I think somebody else is going to do a live feed on Sunday at the time I normally do. I'm going to just start whenever I can get a chance, because it seems like it's getting harder and harder to do them at a set time. I mean, if my spot's open and I have time, then I'll do it. But I hope this helps. I hope you have a little bit better understanding on metal, and this encourages you to advance your skills. You know, take and do something that you might be afraid of, but understand your limitations on your torch, and understand that if you're soldering copper, that you're going to be using more heat, because it transfers heat quicker than sterling. So understand that, and if you're doing a big piece, know that you're going to have to be able to heat it from the bottom. So you're going to need a stand to put it on. And for those of you that's new to it and don't understand that, let's see. I'll get a little picture here. I'll transfer you back. Your stand is like this. Now, don't get the old cheap wire for the top. Go ahead and get you this one. It's not that much difference, and this one will last you. The other one tends to, especially when you're dealing with big stuff, you'll burn holes in the little lightweight screen that it uses, and it'll warp, so it doesn't support your piece as good. So if you're going to get it, you know, the stands are, you know, they're all about the same size. I don't think, I mean, they're pretty much the same, but make sure that you spend the extra for the heavy duty uh, plate on top. And that's going to be it for today. Uh, I hope this is helpful, and like I always say, have fun.